What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Bonus Point Podcast. Big episode today because we are right in the middle of knockout rugby and things are starting to get very, very real. It's been a very busy week for me as well. Busy couple of weeks, actually, with the Knicks in the NBA Finals at the moment. I went through the absolute ringer last night with how stressful that game was, having the biggest comeback in NBA history. So, very excited to chat about some rugby coming up this weekend, because the NBA has just put the complete stressor on me. But we genuinely get to figure out and see who are going to be the contingents that are most likely going to take out these matches this weekend. Some team lists with some massive inclusions and also a couple of selection calls that could genuinely decide who makes the final. We're also going to zoom out and take a proper look at the Australian teams this season, because there's been some honest grading I actually think tells a bigger story about where Australian rugby is at the moment. And then we'll touch on Super Rugby Aupiki with nearly 40 new players, some debutants, which actually I think is huge for the women's game and the growth that they've been exhibiting over the last few years. Second half of the show, we're going to shift into the All Blacks territory. Tony Brown coming in 2028. Very excited for him to come back onto home soil. Kieran Read questioning whether this team has the edge of teams like the Springboks and whether that's actually a mindset issue or something deeper. And then the bonus point segment to finish, the Barbarians squad has been announced with some inclusions. We're seeing Scott Robertson back in the environment again, which also gives us a little glimpse about how he thinks about his rugby after the axing in the All Blacks setup and what we're going to see. So let's get straight into it. This is the Bonus Point Rugby Podcast. All right, semi-final weekend, and honestly, this might be one of the most evenly matched fours that we've had in a while. I think let's just start off with the Chiefs. I'm obviously in the kit right now. This is Damian McKenzie's 150th game, which is wild to think about how long he's been around, how central and how imperative he has been to everything they do. But they've been forced into a couple of injury changes, which does matter at this stage of the season, because you think about how they got into the semi and how much depth they had they could pull from. It doesn't necessarily matter too much about depth at the moment, but it does matter about cohesion. So I'm a bit interested to see how these new inclusions and these people who are coming out of the squad, how that cohesion is going to set in with the team that has been named. The Chiefs are a team that also heavily rely on rhythm, tempo, and McKenzie playing on top of the defense. So any disruption to combinations, especially in the pack or in the spine, can also slow that down just enough to make them a little bit vulnerable. We also know that the Crusaders have been the kryptonite for the Chiefs in finals footy for the past few years. So we will see. And speaking on the Crusaders, they get a massive inclusion back, Fletcher Newell, and that's massive. He's a tremendous player. He provides a lot to that team, scrummaging side, set piece side, just so many different aspects. But if there's one thing you know about Crusaders finals footy, they always want this to turn into a set piece arm wrestle and then squeeze you out of the game. I'm thinking about when the Chiefs played them, I think it was last year or a couple of years ago. It came down to the wire and it came down to a beautifully crafted set piece play that they were able to get on top of the Chiefs. But Newell coming back strengthens their scrum immediately. It gives them their platform to control territory. When the Crusaders can play in your half and they don't need to do anything flashy, they just continue to build pressure over and over and over again until teams crack. So I'm hoping the Chiefs can play really fast. They're able to kind of lean into that unstructured play they have done for a while. But who knows? Crusaders could drag it into a grind and then we'll see what happens. Let's go on to the Hurricanes. They get Fehi back. I think not only is this a selection boost, this is a momentum shift. Not that they need any more momentum. I think just adding him in just brings them and elevates them to another level. He's a try-scoring machine, and more importantly, he gives them finishing power out wide. I think the Hurricanes have one of the most dangerous attacks at the moment throughout the whole season. It hasn't just been in spurts. Having someone who actually converts opportunities consistently, who's on the verge of becoming the greatest try scorer in Super Rugby history, this is what wins knockout games. And Brad Shields made a really interesting point. He says that this Hurricanes team reminds him of the 2016 championship side. What he's really talking about is that there isn't just talent, it's belief and connection. The 2016 team obviously had a clear identity. You look at the names that are in that. You've got TJ Perenara, you've got Corey Jane, you've got Brad Shields, you've got Artie Xavier, you've got Julian Xavier, you've got all these players that obviously are star-studded talent, but they had that belief and connection to get the job done. They had a clear identity. Everyone knew their role. Everyone played with confidence. If this current group is tapping into that same energy, it's dangerous. And I don't care if it's the Chiefs or the Crusaders who get them in the final. They've got to be cognizant of that, and they've got to find ways to manipulate and crack that down. So really excited to see what the Blues bring. I think the Blues have been taken to school a couple of times this season against the Hurricanes. So I'm hoping they can come into it with a competitive mindset and really find those cracks in that armor. And then hopefully it will pay off, because we'll be able to see some stuff in the final that maybe we haven't seen during the season. But speaking of the Blues, Beauden Barrett coming back, not at 10 though. He is going to play fullback. So he's going to be moving away from that first receiver change. It's not necessarily like he can't play and chop and change with Perofeta as a secondary playmaker, or step in when Perofeta's in a ruck or something like that if he does leave. But I think he won't have as much control in early phases. And I think when Bodie is that second playmaker or that strike option, I think there is something that does come over teams when you do have that. I do also love him at 10, but I think just the unpredictability of having him in that second playmaker, that outside channel, does this make them a more balanced team, or does it take away their unpredictability? I think Bodie at 10 is a chaos for defenses as well. When he's shifted, you kind of gain structure and you might lose that instinctive spark. So across these semis, I think there's a pretty common theme here. Control versus chaos. Crusaders and Chiefs, that's exactly what it is. Crusaders are really going to provide a lot. They can bring the chaos when you need them to, but they do exude a lot of control, where the Chiefs it's not chaotic in a negative sense or connotation. They just do so many different things and do it on such a cohesive level that I feel like it's going to be control versus chaos. The teams that manage tempo, execute under pressure, and still take their chances, those are the ones that they're going to be going through. So that's New Zealand teams. I do want to talk a little bit about the Australian teams, because that's the grading that is coming out, and it's pretty when you think about it. You look at how a lot of people are talking about how Australian rugby is dead. And yes, it has seen better days, but you look at all the tickets that have been sold recently for the Wallabies test matches coming up. You see the mixed bag of support that has come up with just support in general from Super Rugby games. I think Australian rugby is trending in a good direction. I think it's just more disappointing in certain aspects and also encouraging. You've got teams like the Brumbies, who, again, are the standard bearers. They're structured, they're consistent, they understand how to win games. They might not have done it as much this season versus last season, but they still did a lot of good things, and they showed why they are the standard. The issue is they're just not closing the gap on top of New Zealand teams. They're competitive, but they're not dominant. They also let a lot of games slip away, where usually they'd finish those out. They would have those 80-minute performances. It's been interesting to watch this season. Then you've got teams like the Reds and the Waratahs. In flashes, they have shown that they have talent. They have composure. They have opportunities to break teams apart, but inconsistency has been the killer. I think one week they look like a top 4 side, the next week they look completely disconnected, and that's usually a sign of two things. Either systems aren't fully embedded, or leadership on the field isn't strong enough to stabilize performances. Then you look at teams like the Western Force, and it's been tough. There have been improvements in certain areas. Overall, I think they're still struggling to compete week to week at the level required. They did get those big inclusions of players like a Zach Lomax coming from league, and you saw towards the back end of the season they were starting to put things together. I think in an earlier podcast when I was talking to Ella Ferguson, she agreed with my sentiment, where if the Force are on, there's not many teams that can really go toe-to-toe with them. Probably three teams I'm thinking of can pick their number on any given day, but I think if the Force are clicking, they've always got the talent to really push the narrative, push the boundary. And I think that's the bigger conversation. I think Australian rugby isn't lacking talent. It's lacking cohesion. It's lacking identity. It's lacking sustained high-performance environments. I think when you look at that, especially with a lot of players that are going overseas to play and getting those contracts, from a identity perspective, I think that's what they're missing. talent isn't the problem. Because when you compare it to New Zealand teams, the difference isn't just skill, it's also clarity. Because I think that there's a lot of players in Australian rugby that I can look at and go, their skill sets are tremendous, but do they have clarity on their role? Do they have the cohesiveness with their team? Do they have that sustained environment that they can really come into every single one of their games and go, I know exactly what I need to do. I know the person next to me is going to do the same thing. I know my coach has his head switched on. Again, a lot of tremendous coaches in Australian rugby, but I think as a collective and as a unit finishing strong, that's the one thing I'm not saying. It's New Zealand teams, outside of a few issues, they know exactly how they want to play and they execute it consistently. Australia right now, there still feels like they are searching it. They found it in spurts, but they're still searching for it. Okay, last bit about Super Rugby. Super Rugby Aupiki. The season is kicking off with nearly 40 debutants. 4-0. That is huge because what it tells you is the player pool is continuing to expand and opportunities are opening up. When you really get that many new players coming in at once, you get unpredictability. You also get growth. I think those are the two things that I really want to hone in on, because I think there's been a bit of negative chat going in saying, oh, there's a lot of these new faces coming in. We're not seeing our stars maintain their position. You want players to push that narrative. You want players to come in and create that environment where you don't know whether you're going to get picked week in, week out. You don't know whether you're going to have an 18-year-old come out of this environment or come from the Sevens program or come from different areas and they're going to get their shot. Also, this could be an opportunity for coaches to see early on what these players are made of. That way, you know exactly what you get from them in high pressure situations from a debut game, and then you can make adjustments. But I think if you look at this competition overall, I'm really excited to see how it progresses. And I love to see that this many players are getting an opportunity, because we've seen a few players who are in the Black Fern system go overseas, get their contracts. And that's why some of these players are getting their opportunity. But I think it also comes down to the environment. A lot of players are just really being competitive. They're giving an opportunity for themselves and for these teams to be successful. And I can't wait to see how they're going to step up immediately and how others might take time. Overall, it raises the level of competition. Long term, it's exactly what the women's game needs, especially as we head into another World Cup. More depth, more exposure, more players coming through high performance systems. So really excited to see how everything comes along with Super Rugby. And then let's head into our second half segment after we take a break. Okay, second half segment, All Blacks. Let's shift into that because this is where things get really interesting with a new announcement that has just come this week. Tony Brown, the savior of what a lot of people have been calling him, is coming into the coaching setup in a big way in 2028. If you don't know Tony Brown, which I really hope you do because he is one of the greatest coaches, in my opinion, at the moment in the game of rugby, not just in New Zealand. He has been with the Springboks for the past couple seasons. He brings the greatest attacking innovation I've seen in a long time, a willingness to play flatter, and a mindset that encourages players to take risks. Historically, when Tony Brown is involved, teams play with intent. I'm thinking of the Highlanders. I'm thinking of Japan. I'm thinking of just his whole mindset. It's not just about innovation. It's not about trying to be unique in the way you approach things. He is someone that really brings the best intent structurally and aggressive play into a team. Whether we see him come in as the attack coach in 2028 or we see Blair maintain his position and Tony Brown comes in some other way, shape or form, either way is going to be great. I think we're all going to see how it plays out in this upcoming tour with South Africa and the All Blacks test matches coming up, because obviously we don't know what we're going to get from Blair and from Rennie and from a lot of the coaches because haven't done anything yet. All they've been doing is looking and selecting and getting ready to make that understanding of how the All Blacks are going to attack this test match series. But we will see. And then Tony Brown, no matter way, shape or form, he's going to be excellent. And also the sneaky little information he's going to bring back about what he saw in the South African camp. You combine that with what Kieran Read has said recently on a podcast, that the All Blacks don't currently have the same absolute belief as the Springboks. I don't want to diminish this. This is not a small comment. That's a former All Blacks captain saying that this team might be lacking an edge. And when you look at the Springboks, what defines them? Clarity, physical dominance, a complete belief in their system. It may go away in certain spurts, but they always come back to it and they don't second guess what they're doing. The All Blacks, on the other hand, have been in a bit of a identity transitional crisis. In my opinion, and this kind of goes against what some other people have been saying. The All Blacks have talent. That's never been the issue. I think some people argue against certain positions that we don't have the best talent, but I disagree with that. I think a lot of our players can go toe-to-toe with a lot of different positional players in World Rugby, but are they fully committed to a style? Do they trust it under pressure? I think you can definitely see spurts of that when you look at how they played in this past test match season, especially with the whole narrative that came out about the assistant coaches having a more say about how we play and structures and systems versus what Razor was doing, even though I've gone on many times before, and this isn't backing him up saying we should have kept him as a coach. I've just said consistently that is what Razor did for years and years. He has been a coach that gets coaches in to support him or put into positions for them to be successful and implement systems, philosophies, things like that. That's what Razor did the whole time. And was it at the team's detriment? Probably, because I don't see all 15 players on the field committed to a style, a structure, trusting it under pressure. That's what Read is getting at. It's not about tactics, it's about conviction. And I think this is where we're a long way off this, because it's 2028 Tony Brown comes in, but Tony Brown could be crucial in this. If he can help create a clear attacking identity or something that players genuinely believe in, then I personally believe that edge can come back. And I believe that's what Kieran Read is saying, because confidence just doesn't come from results. It comes from knowing exactly how you're trying to win and the conviction behind that. So all in all, I think that is what I'm hoping we will see under Dave Rennie and this coaching staff, this new team that is named. I really hope that is starting in this test match series coming up after Super Rugby, and we can start to see some dominoes come. Last segment, bonus point segment to finish. The Barbarians have just made things even more interesting. The latest additions to the summer tour squad includes Duhan van der Meer, TJ Perenara, and Kyle Sinckler, which instantly gives you a group with a bit more punch and personality. I think if I just lean in on one guy that I admire so much, has the same name as me, TJ Perenara, personality, he's got it written all over him. Anytime you saw him in Super Rugby or in the All Blacks, he always brought that personality. And that's exactly what you want from the Barbarians. I think big name players, different styles, and the chance to see what happens when world-class talent is given freedom. TJ Perenara is one person that jumps out at everyone in this conversation, especially after everything we've been talking about with tempo, belief, attacking identity. He exudes that. He brings energy. He brings instinct, a real willingness to play what's in front of him, which suits the Barbarians perfectly. He's always playing heads-up footy. Van der Meer and Sinckler, they add in that same sense of quality and presence. So this doesn't feel like a ceremonial squad, which in past Barbarians teams I've seen, I've gone, kind of feels like they're just getting their swan song or something where they're getting an opportunity to kind of just show something they didn't get to do in their international teams. This is literally a team I'm feeling that is starting that can produce some proper rugby in this type of environment. And then I think the Scott Robertson thing of him coming in, it's always worth watching anytime he's around a Barbarian setup. Regardless of what you think about what happened with the All Blacks, you can't tell me that you don't get a feeling of freedom within this framework. Players are encouraged to express themselves. It also comes with a clear expectation around intensity and connection. We're obviously going to be going up, and I say the Barbarians are going to be going up against some tremendous teams, and this is going to be a great test for them because they're going to have a great team to go up. But this is going to be a good group to watch. It's going to be fun. Because even when it's loose, it still has purpose. So I'm really excited to see how the Barbarians come into this, because it's not just about the squad being announced. It's about the kind of rugby these names might create together. And it's just so incredible to think about what could potentially come out of that. So that's where we're at. Super Rugby semis are set. Honestly, it feels like this is where we really find out who's ready to take control of this competition and head into this next year. I personally have the Chiefs coming out against the Crusaders by 5 to 7 points. I think it's going to be a tight one. The Hurricanes versus Blues game, unless the Hurricanes come out really flat and the Blues come out swinging, I have no doubt that they're going to be coming out between 8 to 14 points ahead of the Blues, and they're heading into a Super Rugby final. They've just had too much momentum. They've just been tremendous this whole season. And it's my old man's team. So I'm rooting for them. I'm excited to see where they go. Australian rugby still searching for consistency and identity. I'm very excited to see what happens with this Wallabies team coming up this season. Am I thinking they're going to be all over teams? No. But I think there's going to be a lot of progress that is made heading into this Australian World Cup. And I think they're going to start to build some momentum. All Blacks potentially rebuilding their edge, new voices coming in. I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for this squad to be named, because not only do I want to see the direction that Rennie is going in, I also just want to see some players I know who have the potential to really rise this team up to new standards in this environment that I've seen do it before in other camps. So really excited to see how that goes. And the Barbarians reminding us what rugby looks like when players are just allowed to play. So pencil me in to watch that game, because it's going to be tremendous. Let me know your predictions for the semis, who's making the final, who's taking it out this year. That is it from me. It's been a short and sharp one this week because we've got NBA finals. We've got a lot of things cooking in the pipeline. I'm still heading out to go watch USA Rugby play a couple of teams on July 4th here in the US. Very excited to do that. All the best to Super Rugby Aupiki kicking off soon as well. Can't wait to see what those tremendous ladies do. And we will catch you in the next episode. We'll be chatting all about the Super Rugby finals next week. Have a good one, guys.